Hello there. You are someone and I am someone else. And today I'm going to be talking about why humans are infinitely corrupt and why institutions are the checks against them. Okay. So in John Lockean thought, this is the opposite of what Rousseau believes. That Rousseau believes that humans are infinitely wise or whatever, or will become infinitely wise and perfect, and institutions are the things holding them back. Is there some truth to that? Maybe, but I highly doubt it. Really, I think humans are very, very corruptible, like what John Locke says, and it's institutions that check them. I actually do agree with that. However, I think the way he wants to do it is a little different from what I want to do. He's obviously very religious, John Locke. He wants to check people with the church. Somewhat the government should be fast acting because it's a very big structure, which I actually agree with. The government's so big, it should not be fast. If it was fast, you could get authoritarianism very quickly in such a big structural government. That's what John Locke believes, right? John Locke, basically, he didn't prophetize any of this stuff. He basically wrote down what was actually already happening in the English Civil War. And his philosophy, while he was writing it down, his philosophy was actually happening. So it's a little bit interesting. It's like a nuance. It isn't a direct thing like that he has made up himself. It was actually starting to happen, things he wanted to do. Now the issue is his public schools that he wanted, obviously they wouldn't be tax funded. They would be profit funded. Basically, they would give you the skills to work at a shop, and in return, you would give them money at the end of your schooling. You would be able to turn a nice profit for the church, which he thought church and education were somewhat. So he did believe in order. Not like, he did believe in somewhat hierarchy and order, but he was also anarchist in the fact that he just didn't want law to be passed that much, fast, I would say. Fast, slowing acting institutions. The United Kingdom, the reason why it was so stable, because the monarchy didn't control everything. And the lords, you get to pick between which lord you wanted to work under. And then, the lords would check the House of Commons, but the House of Commons, after a while, could unveto the House of Lords. During that time, during the English Civil War, they became more powerful than the House of Lords. And the monarchy very rarely talked about laws or whatever. But that system was very, very stable because it was very, very slow acting. And the lords and the king had no reason to pillage the country immediately. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, they had enough resources where they were able to survive. Unlike the France, where they just immediately spent all the money. What France did was incredibly stupid, and of course it was going to lead to a revolution. Because, think about it, you're a king, right? And you're king, you don't have a term limit. You're going to pass it on to your heir. Now, sure, you could enjoy life today, but you're going to squash your future kids' power. Would you really want to squash their inheritance over something so stupid? And so that's why the British monarchy has lasted so long, because they realized the power of inheritance. Even the Soviet Union, even a socialist country like the Soviet Union, talks about inheritance. When your family dies, you immediately get the home, most likely. That's what it says in the Constitution of the Soviet Union. I didn't read it exactly well enough, but they do talk about inheritance in the Soviet Union. It's, for a government that taxes basically everything else, it's kind of funny. But even then, again, that's the thing about monarchy. Compared to democracy, where you just come into that term, you don't have that big of a term limit. You can just pillage as much as you want during that term limit, because the next person comes in, you're going to leave it a goddamn mess, and then by the time he leaves office, he's sort of pillaged a little bit after he built it up again. Democracy doesn't lead to very, very good results. So I actually think the United Kingdom is a more stable government than the United States. This based on the slow-acting institutions and the fact that some people are born into it. Yes, is it necessarily a good system? No, it's not. I think it should be more like a jury. I don't think it should be used to be born into a random royal family. I think it should be more of a jury thing. Be like, okay, this person was a firefighter or whatever, or not a firefighter, but they served in tradesman, firefighter, a military expert, whatever. okay, they'll be appointed. Like, I at least actually want, I would want that 25% of people or 50% of people in Congress to be like jury, basically. You get like a round of like 9 people that did something. They didn't even ask for it. They didn't even ask to become a leader. Because the thing is, the best leader we've had in this country, one of our best, was called George Washington. If you don't know about him, he's a legend in this place, right? There's my whole capital named after him that I live near. Anyways, besides the point, right? George Washington was a general. He didn't want to be president. He never wanted to be president. But his general expertise was able to get him to become president. He wasn't a very good general in the fact that he was terrible at military strategy. He was great at listening to other military generals talk about their strategy, though. So he would apply that to his own strategy. When he was fighting the British, he was one of the worst generals in human history, but he was able to keep the morale of his troops, which is incredible. Like, the fact that he was able to do that, keep his army together, was the most impressive thing about him. Because nobody else was doing crap about it, and he was the only one who was able to do it. Anyway, we need somebody like George Washington who didn't want to be president, but was a good one. You could just tell, like, he cared. He cared enough to like, keep the country together, but didn't care enough to gain his own power. He was very, very, like, listen to his advisors sort of role as a president. And so that's what we need. We need somebody like George Washington. And the only way we're going to get that is if we don't elect him. We sort of have a jury, and then we elect him afterwards. Get like 9 guys that we know we like. Because I don't like weird businessmen that screw people over, and I don't like Joe Biden, who's like a career politician, right? In my opinion, I do like slow-acting institutions. I am a John Lockean. But I believe the system that we have today is worse than the British monarchy. Because the British monarchy, while they are born into it, they don't have the incentive to immediately pillage all the country's resources for themselves, like Joe Biden does, right? And so that is the issue I have, right? Is I'm not a big fan of short-term democracy for, like, people who rule for short periods of time. I am a bigger fan of long periods of time because, especially with inheritance, because you just don't have the incentive to really squash the country's resources immediately. But again, I'm sure there are like laws in place to not squash all the country's resources, but there might not be very soon anyway, because they do make all the laws, all the business regulations, all that. But yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm like, what would be like the best strategy when it comes to thinking about stuff? What would be the best strategy? But I don't know. I would just say, like, in the, like, I do want this appointed jury thing for government. I think it would be a much better system we have today. But I don't know who would be the advisors of it. I don't want, like, a bunch of academics, controlling the, the system. So I'd rather have, like, I don't know. I would rather have the, like, a bunch of, like, tradesmen control the, people who get into jury duty. I think I'd rather have, like, a bunch of crazy tradesmen who, like, built up a lot of this country. But I don't want it to be tax funded. I don't want it all to be private industry that appoints the people. Sort of like an election, except a very, very exclusively to only producers of the economy. I don't want it to be by parasites of the economy. That being said, I'm sure there are good and bad things about my ideal. But I would like to create the most John Lockean society ever with natural rights and all this stuff. Like, I generally believe in some of it, right? I believe in private property. Without private property, there's no economic calculation at all. And so, I believe the best way to preserve private property is with slow-acting institutions, and not with fast-acting ones like we have today, which are getting faster and faster. Used to be slow-acting, but, of course, people keep violating the Constitution, so we're not going to have that anymore. But I would like to see a little bit a little bit slower institutions if we can get that. But if we can't, it's fine. I don't necessarily know or care, I guess, but but yes. So John Locke believes in I've already said this multiple times. John Locke believes in slow acting institutions, and slower people act on laws. Rousseau believes in faster acting institutions. He believes that in order to have humanity's will be truly cherished, you have to have fast acting institutions, which I don't necessarily agree with. That being said, I don't know how you would preserve, I'm not a big fan of some of the stuff in the Constitution. Like, there's always going to be a debate on it. But I don't know. I'm thinking here. But yes, we like gun rights and the thing is, how do we make schools? So what I would do, because school is always going to be an expense in a society. It's never going to be a benefit economically. So the best way I would structure school when it comes to slow-acting institutions is give them a bunch of money. Give every family that has kids a bunch of money. I wouldn't make school mandatory. If you want to homeschool your kid, that's fine. You're still going to get the voucher just for the school supplies or whatever. And then, right? Then you get to be like, okay, let the schools compete. And also, the reason why all these school shootings happen, all this crap, right? It's like, the reason why the kids who are safer at home is because they're not at the campus where there's no security. It's like a free range for that crazy person to go into school and hurt people, right? You leave your kid at home, homeschool them, the chances of them going to I hate it so much on the news media, right? I hear these parents say, oh, I'm so afraid of my kid going to school. I'm like, then why would you bring your kid to school? What, are you a dumb person? Like, do you know that teachers can't protect your kid? You know the government won't protect your kid. The Supreme Court says your kid's not their responsibility. It says it right there in the Supreme Court case. You're not listening to the Supreme Court about your own kid. I'm baffled. I'm absolutely baffled. These parents are not up in arms at what the Supreme Court said. I'm baffled. So if you're not going to listen to the Supreme Court, what they ruled, then and you're just going to bring your kid to school anyway, and you're still afraid of your kid, it makes you a dumb parent. I'm sorry, you're just a dumb person. But maybe you just didn't know about the Supreme Court case. In that case, I don't know. I don't know what you've been doing. You live under a rock. Like the policeman was was literally not afraid to go into the school to stop the school shooter, and the Supreme Court says, oh, he has no duty to protect those kids in there. I'm thinking to myself, what? So you're telling me I pay taxes to a group of people who are supposed to protect me? The Supreme Court says they don't have the obligation to protect me. So the only person that has the obligation to protect me is myself. Okay, there's my argument for the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court says they have no obligation to protect you. These parents should know that. I cannot drill that in their heads. I cannot. And that's a shame on the Supreme Court and the police officer for not wanting to stop school shooters sooner. But whatever, he was able to hurt a few more people in there. But that doesn't matter, I guess, that much anymore, right? It's already been ruled on. There's not much we can do to overturn the Supreme Court. They're like the last deciders for the most part. So, just keep in mind, like, all this terrible stuff that happens, it's all been ruled upon already. So just keep your kid at home, or, like, I want the private voucher system, and then, like, some schools will invest some of those vouchers into security. That's what I want, because I hate the monopolies that the schools have they're so unsafe with all these shootings and stuff. They're so unsafe. So we need private vouchers, publicly, either taxed vouchers or like private vouchers. I don't know how to make that system exactly, but I would rather it not be taxed. But if it's going to be taxed, okay, whatever. I would at least want school choice, except for all, because all these stupid education monopolies are not working. Okay. You or someone else, I have to go to work. Goodbye.